Hey everybody, it's Pam and Bill from Country Living Newbie Custom Decor in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And tonight we are going to do a video for you guys on wet distressing. So I get a lot of questions about the differences between taking a piece of sandpaper to distress and then wet distressing with a sponge. So we're going to show you on this piece, and I don't know if you remember, if you haven't watched it, you can catch it on the replay. A couple days ago, we were showing how to clean and prep furniture, and we used these two nightstands, and they were just plain wood in that video, so they look a little different now. We were painting them with Dixie Belle's dried sage. So dried sage is a real pretty, almost like a gray with a green, olivey green undertone. So you can see, actually I don't know if you can see it on the video very well or not, but this one has just pure dried sage on it, a little bit of sanding. This one is sanded and wet distressed, and the color is significantly different. I think it just really brought out the green when I used the wet sponge on it. So keep in mind when you are wet distressing something that the water and the sanding will change the color or the tone of the color a little bit. So if you're not sure you want to go in that direction, do a practice piece. Always do a practice piece if you're trying something new and you're just not sure of how it's going to turn out. It might save you a lot of rework in the end. So this one, I did 2 coats of dried sage, and then I just was going to sand some of the edges, and then I decided I really wanted to heavily distress it, and I kind of wanted to get more of a worn look on some of the other surfaces. And normally with wet distressing, you're doing 2 colors. So you do a base coat of your color, and then you let that completely dry, and then you do your top coat. And then when that's dry for not too long, half hour to an hour, you take a wet sponge and you wipe it back. And you wipe it back just enough to bring the bottom color through, but you don't go all the way through to the wood. But this one I did use the wet distressing technique with just 1 color, and I wanted the wood to show through. So we're going to show you how to do that. And this is still kind of a work in progress, but on the drawer, we're going to put a transfer on there. This is a Redesign with Prima transfer, and it's rustic teal. I had never done one of these on a drawer before, and actually said to Bill, well, let's do this on a video. And he looked at me like I had 4 heads and said, oh, have you ever done one of these before with these edges? And I said, no. Well, then we shouldn't do that on a video. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll practice once and then we'll do it on a video. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and be totally honest. I put it on upside down. So, which, you know.
I didn't notice myself.
So I put it on upside down. I was a little short on the top, so I just went ahead and sanded it all off. But you can kind of see the butterflies are flying in a downward motion. But it still looks good, so we're gonna make sure we get that one on upside down too. It's gonna be beautiful. So anyway, you know, what are you gonna do? So this one comes actually in, and these transfers are amazing. Like I'm always saying how versatile they are. This one came in 3 sheets that were pretty large, and there's probably going to be a huge glare, I would imagine, because it's shiny.
Not too bad.
So there's 3 of these sheets, and basically I put it on upside down, obviously, and just kind of cut out what I thought was going to cover the edges, and then I really did want to distress over it anyway, but I cut it out, I put it on, scraped it on, and I missed a little spot somewhere, I don't even remember where, and I just cut another little piece off and put it on right over it and never even know it. So once we
get... As long as it's a busy pattern like that.
Yeah, I didn't have to line anything up
or
anything like that. So, and I still have
very forgiving.
A ton of this left. And be careful because I dropped a little piece and it stuck to the floor and I can't get it off. So we now have a rustic teal transfer on the floor. But that's okay, there's lots of things on this floor, so it's all good. All right, so again, this is Dixie Belle's dried sage. And to do both of these with 2 coats, I didn't even use a full one of these. So great coverage. This paint goes a long way. And we're going to take this down. That's right, I got this, honey.
I'm running the camera.
Okay. So other than 2 coats of paint and a light sanding on the top, I haven't done anything else to this piece. We're going to take the drawer out because we can work on that later. And how I really got to wet distressing this one was I started to just do a little distressing on the edges with some fine sandpaper. This is a 400 grit. And it wasn't really taking off as much as I wanted it to. Now this paint has been on for a day, so it's kind of on there. So I was getting kind of frustrated with that. So then I went to a much lower grit. I think this is 100. And I started hitting the edges with that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. And for edges and distressing, this is great. It's a sanding block with a low grit sandpaper, and it takes the paint right off the edges. But what I didn't like was how it got kind of scratchy on these other surfaces. So it wasn't really taking it off clean, but it was making it look just real scratchy. So I just didn't like that look. So that's when I decided to try the wet distress method. So to do that, I have these super cheap sponges. You get them in a whole pack at dollar store. There's like 10 in a pack. You know, they have the kind of
Scrunch.
Yeah, it's a scrunge. It's a scrungy sponge. So you can use, if you had just applied your paint, you could actually use the soft spot, the soft side to take the paint off. But again, this has been on 24 hours, so it's sticking pretty good. So I used the rougher side. And to do this, so wet distressing doesn't mean that your piece is wet. It means that you wet your sponge or your sanding sponge, whatever you're using, your kitchen sponge, to do the distressing. So you can dip it in water and wring it out. I have my Mr. bottle, and I was just spraying it. You don't have to get it soaked, and it's a good idea to have a rag handy, because when you put water like this on a water-based paint, you're gonna kind of reactivate the paint, and it's gonna start to smear, and it may even cover the part that you're taking off. So you might not know how much you're taking off until you actually rub off the wet paint. So with that said, you have to go kind of slow with this. So don't go right in, you know, with all your elbow grease. Do it light and just keep putting some pressure on until you see the paint start to come off. And I'm just gonna start at the edge, and you may go, oh, it's not really coming off. And as soon as you start to press a little harder, it'll come off. And it can come off quite a bit. So you really just want to take your time with this. I mean, you could always paint over it if you take too much off, but if you're like me, you don't want to do a lot of rework. So just kind of take it slow. The other thing about wet distressing is when you go over this and it dries, it is so soft and smooth. It's ridiculous. It's a baby's bottom. It's so smooth. But you can see, or I'm not sure you can or not, but it's already changed the color a little bit. There's kind of this green hue coming
it's
through.
Hard to see through the.
Yeah.
But just barely. Just barely does it change it.
So I would start, you know, distressing is, you want to distress your piece in the normal places that furniture would get distressed. So these edges, these raised areas. I'm not going to go and distress the whole top, although I'm gonna do some, because if you're always placing something in the same spot, you know, the paint's eventually going to wear off. But you don't want to be too purposeful about it, because it just won't look natural. So the easiest way to do this is really just start hitting the edges. And it's gonna get really kind of messy with the water.
Now hold on just for a second, because you can really see the
green?
The green coming out.
Yeah. And do you see
there's
where it's coming through? And if you don't wipe it back, you don't really know how much you've actually taken off. And then you wipe it back and you go, oh my goodness.
At that point, you repaint it.
Took way too much off. So, so we'll do a little more here on the front.
Now, before you wipe it, very little has come off, and then you start wiping it down, and you realize a lot has come off.
Yep. And it's super smooth. So you'll have to re-wet your sponge fairly often. So there's some raised areas here. This is a nice dark wood, so it's gonna just look really pretty when it starts to come through. If you had, you know, if you were painting raw wood and you painted it white and then you wet distressed it, the light, let's take pine, you really wouldn't see what you distress. So that case, you would want to paint your first coat something dark, like a gray or a brown, and then paint your white over it, and then wet distress it. So you got to kind of think about your colors and how they go together, what you're going to see once you start removing them. Oops. And you're going to find the edges are going to come off pretty easy. And the flat parts you're going to need to use a little more elbow grease.
Take it off the tripod so I can get a little bit of better close-ups here. That's a good one. You can really see the green. Nice. Almost like you know what you were doing.
That's crazy. I mean, you know, I'm pretty new at this. So I learn a lot by watching other retailers, watching YouTube, but mostly just do it. Like, just pick up a piece of cheap furniture at Goodwill and, I don't know, paint it, take the paint off, stain it, glaze it. Try these products. They're very forgiving. They really are easy to use, and I can say that as a beginner, really. It's not like I've been doing this for years by any means.
In a very short period of time, you've become quite
I think
adept at it.
the products lend itself to that, and there are so many resources. Guys, if you want to learn how to paint furniture, or paint anything for that matter, you know, YouTube is a wonderful thing. There are Facebook pages out there. The Dixie Belle Facebook page and the Chalk Mineral Paint Enthusiast page. You will learn just about everything on there. All right, let's turn it on its side here. So the other reason I wanted to wet distress this was because I did want to, I wanted to take some off of the flat surfaces, although not too much because you don't usually get wear and tear there. But I didn't want to have all the edges distressed and then just have this totally plain. And if you take a sandpaper to this, it doesn't look natural to me. It looks kind of scratchy. So this just makes it look more worn. And I found that I kind of had to do the whole thing because of the way it changed the color. So that's kind of why I'm going over the whole thing with the sponge. Even though I'm pressing hard here to take some of the paint off over here, I just did it to to change the color. And I don't want to do too much on the side. Just enough to balance it with the rest. Anybody has any questions, put them in the comments and we'll make sure we get to them. And if you're watching a replay, we'll make sure we get to them that way as well. And I would love for you to share our video. If you have friends, invite them to watch. We also have a YouTube channel that we just started, so we're going to be putting these videos on YouTube as well. I know there's a lot of people out there that really just
a little more off down here.
Are just looking for some beginner videos on getting started, and nothing too difficult, and that's kind of what we're trying to show everybody. Just some easy techniques. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again on the side, and that's a little more than I wanted to take off there, but that's all right.
So that looks great.
Nope. And you have to make sure you get in these grooves here, the edge of your sponge. Scrunch.
That's also a musical genre, isn't it?
I think that's grunge.
Oh, grunge.
You're old. All right. So that's your basics of wet distressing. I think we have time to do the little drawer.
Do it.
Do it?
Do it.
Yes. Okay. So bonus feature. It's probably going to be more like bloopers after the show, but just to show you, we're all human, and we have to do something for the first time at some point. Okay, so on this drawer, I already cut this one to go on the other drawer, so we're just going to use the same one, and we're going to have to do it upside down. All right, so on this one, this is raised, which, I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work around those corners, but what I ended up doing...
Hi, Danielle.
Hey, Danielle. Thanks for watching. So I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work on these corners. First of all, I found out that some of the transfers are more sticky than others. This one, are you looking at the floor?
Yes.
I dropped the transfer on the floor and now it's stuck. That is beautiful.
That's
I love
how sticky it is.
So this one, like as soon as it touched the drawer, it was down. Some of them, are a little more forgiving, but you really want to be careful with when you place it, that's kind of where you want it to be. So when you cut these, you absolutely have to cut them with the protective backing on it. So this one has a white border around it. And I'm not really sure why, unless that's supposed to go around a drawer. I don't really know. So we're cutting it off. And if you have a square left over after you cut your transfers up, save them. Because you wouldn't believe the little things you can throw a transfer on. Like those little cutting boards that we put the little birds and twigs and stuff on. Those were just little
bamboo cutting boards.
Yeah, those were just little scrap pieces that I had left over. So don't throw them out just because you didn't finish, using the whole piece.
Hello.
And we are open, guys, so we're gonna put the camera back on the tripod. And is that a good?
Whoops.
Oh, hey, how are you? Great. Can you grab the welcome sign and the Tennessee sign
Yes.
in the back? That is
Sure.
for them.
Oh, wait.
Okay. So we're just gonna measure that. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we're actually gonna sand off the edges. Because I don't want it to look super neat. And we're gonna cut this as straight as we can. And really try to make sure that backing stays on when you're cutting this.
This all right? Yeah. And then this one. Thank you. You're welcome. You like? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Enjoy.
so we're gonna have to put this one on upside down. I'm so bummed, but that's okay. Okay,
All right. Sorry about that.
and I'm gonna cut it here. So we were talking about the corners, and what I ended up doing on this one, well, I shouldn't say what I ended up doing. What I learned from doing is it's best to probably, once you take the backing off and place it, flatten it out on the raised part, and then start working the lower parts. And you probably have to cut, like I cut little slits actually where these corners were, because this is, you know, it's on plastic, so it's not like you can mold it to those type of areas. And then you always kind of want to make sure, you know, this is my first one doing this, so I probably didn't pay as much of attention as I should have, but make sure you decide what part of the design you want to have on your piece, because there's, you know, if your roses need to match up or line up or whatever, you have to be conscious of that.
Danielle wants to know where we got the transfer from.
These are Redesign with Prima transfers. So there are Redesign with Prima retailers across the country, across the world actually. So you need to find a local retailer or someone that ships. And unfortunately we don't ship. Hopefully one day we will. But there's, I believe, I want to say on their site they might have a listing of who's online and who's like a brick and mortar store. But you can find a retailer on the Prima with Redesign with Prima site. So I'm just pressing this on, and I already feel it adhering, like it almost like sucked to it when I laid it down. And I'm a little short over there, and I'm a little long over there. But that's okay, because we're gonna sand off all the edges anyway. So now I'm just gonna start pressing it down on the flat side. Are we okay on that side with lighting? Or do I need to?
It's okay.
It's all right. And this is really glossy paper, which I'm gonna be taking off in a minute. And it's not all gonna stay down. In fact, some of it is gonna stick and your top piece is going to lift off, and that's okay. Just kind of press it down the best you can. And I'm not gonna worry too much about the edges until we get there. So I'm gonna start by, and this comes in all the packages. So it's a tool that just lets you scrape the transfer on. You can use it this way or this way, whatever is more comfortable for you. It does not take much for these to adhere. So you don't really have to press all that hard. Sometimes you'll feel it separate, and you'll almost kind of see the transfer turn pale when it leaves the plastic. but not always. And if you don't see that happen, it doesn't mean it's not adhering, because it is. So this is stuck. No peeking. So now I'm going to start on this edge. And here, you're not going to probably, I don't know if you can see this or not. So right here, it's a little different color. It's getting pale. And then you'll start to hear it separate. And when you do, yikes. Well, try not to do that. The good thing with this pattern is if you make mistakes, it's not all that evident other than putting the whole darn thing upside down. Which has been known to happen. Not by me, but...
No, of course not.
Okay, so now I'm going to start the other side. These transfers do need to be sealed once they're on. So we use Dixie Belle paint products on all our pieces. So I'll be sealing this either with Gator Hide or Dixie Belle's clear coat.
Debbie says nice.
Nice, thank you, Debbie.
And it looks like a thumbs up. I don't have my glasses on.
You don't have your glasses on?
No.
I don't either. All right, so I think I'm gonna press these sides down. And you can see, like, I'm not really holding this now, but it's kind of sticking. And where I kind of have this bubble, I'm just gonna put a little slit in there. And again, on these edges, I'm gonna sand these edges off, so I'm not overly concerned about it being perfect there. So I can see, and some of it you can just press down with your finger too. That looks pretty good. If you start to lift your paper up and the transfer comes with it, just put it back down. And so that one just separated normally. That's your best case scenario, but it doesn't always do that. Oh, now, yeah, so now I can hear it separating. Nope. Thank you, Igor.
You're small too.
We missed Bill at our paint class last night. He's usually our Igor. Bill, wash the brushes. Bill, we need this. Honey, we need this.
More candy.
But yeah, quick, more candy. Bill's kids were here, Amber and Trevor from Georgia. We're in Tennessee. The kids live near Atlanta, his kids. So they were here for a couple days. So he ditched me for class. But we survived.
Actually, Connie said it was one of the best classes you've had.
Yeah, it was a good one. We did,
So maybe it's me being
maybe
there.
it's you.
I think I should avoid all the classes.
You should avoid all the classes, especially the bring your own piece ones, right? Those are fun, but they're exhausting, guys. They are exhausting. Okay. We did a Christmas palette sign class last night. It was really fun. All right. So now, the big reveal.
And you're going real slow and checking
because
to see if it's sticking or not.
This spot right here.
See how it's pulling up?
I did not even probably hit that spot. So just lay it back down and go over it again. make sure before you put a transfer on that your paint is completely dry. If it is not, your transfer will not stick and your paint will come off. And you will not be happy.
Did it stick?
That's
Okay,
the
it
edge.
did. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so, you know, little spot there, which, because this transfer is so patterned, we're just gonna cut a little piece off. Don't even look at my hands. Ugh.
Sorry.
They are disgusting. Okay. So this one, actually, let's cover all of that up. And I could have been probably a lot more careful with the piece I picked, but being that this is going to be sanded, I don't really care. Okay. So the end pieces you can just kind of almost rub off if they're sticking out. And then we're going to take some sandpaper and where is, this is a 400, it's probably 2. Let's see. And so I'm just going over the edges to kind of roughen them up because I don't want to see these lines here, right? I want it to kind of become one with the drawer. Become one with the drawer. I switched to a 150. It might be too much, but let's see. No.
So you're going to try to take the paint off just to make it a little more brown.
Yeah, I just want to kind of meld this together. And I actually want to take some of the transfer off too. So you can't really see like where the transfer ends and where the paint begins. And you can go over the whole transfer and distress it, which is what I did on that other drawer. Because these things, I mean, I think they're meant to really look distressed. You know, that's just the look. And they do it well. Is that good?
Yeah, there was a part that didn't adhere and was bubbled up a little bit, but again, you just put your fingers down to it, rub it back in.
And there it is. And you notice I didn't care about the hardware hole because we're just going to poke the hardware through it, like that one. So you don't have to cut out around it or worry about that. Just go right through it. And the same thing, you know, if
Cheryl.
Hey Cheryl, if we were doing drawers that were together, or like I've done a drop leaf table where you can put the leaves up and put the whole transfer across it, scrape it on, and then you can take a razor blade and just cut down the middle. I mean, you can cut it into separate pieces if you want, but if you have two pieces that are close together, you don't really need to.
Well, in that way it keeps consistency.
The pattern.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier than trying to line it all up. But so now we have 2 upside down transfers on these drawers. That's all right though, right?
beautiful.
I mean, hey, you live and learn.
Yeah.
So that's it on our little impromptu transfer tutorial and wet distressing.
Nice job.
Super easy. If you have any questions, please let us know. And again, we are Country Living Newbie, Custom Decor in Spring Hill, Tennessee. We would love for you to get on our Facebook page and YouTube and Instagram and Pinterest and all that stuff. Give us a like and share. And I think we're 12 likes away from 1,000 likes on our page. So we would love to get to that milestone. So please tell a friend and share, and we'd love your feedback. And everyone have a really, really amazing Thanksgiving. Don't forget that we got Black Friday and of course Small Business Saturday. So please go out, support your Dixie Belle retailers wherever they are, whether it's a booth or it's a brick and mortar. And we depend on you guys. We love you guys to come into the store and talk with us and try the products, and we just know you'll love them.
So many products.
So little time.
I don't have enough furniture.
All right, everybody, from our family to yours, happy Thanksgiving. Bye now.